Audiogyan is proud to partner with UnBox Cultural Futures Society and What Design Can Do. What Design Can Do is an international organization that seeks to accelerate the transition to a sustainable, fair, and just society using the power of design. What Design Can Do is launching Make It Circular Challenge, a global design competition building a circular future in partnership with IKEA. This challenge invites designers and creative entrepreneurs from everywhere to submit design driven climate innovations. The end goal? To show the world that circular future is not only imaginable but actionable. Winning projects will be propelled into 2023 with a 10,000 euro in funding and a tailor made development program. Submit your proposals online for free by 31st Jan 2023. Check out the design briefs and learn more about it on makeitcircular.whatdesigncando.com. Link in the show notes. And now today's episode. This is Audiogyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Today we have Ayush Chauhan with us on Audiogyan. Ayush is a managing partner and co-founder of Quicksand Design Studio. He's a strong advocate of transformative roles through design within public policy, international development, social enterprise, and innovation, for which he was also granted the prestigious Yale World Fellowship in 2012. Ayush is also an avid triathlete. Quicksand Studio also hosts the UnBox Cultural Futures Society. It's a platform exploring new narratives and building action at the intersection of disciplines to reimagine Indian plural futures. As part of its agenda, UnBox partners with What Design Can Do regularly, and this year they bring Make It Circular Challenge. More about it in the show notes and also in the course of our conversation. So welcome Ayush to Audiogyan, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Kedar. Equally excited to be here. Thank you so much for giving me and UnBox this opportunity.
Awesome. In the beginning, obviously, given the body of your work and as a pre-roll in this episode about what design can do, I wanted to pick multiple threads here, but mainly around what design can do in India. And I'm sure we all are exposed to MP Ranjan's list of stuff and bunch of other things which can be done. But given that your academic slash plus with like practicing experience, I think it will help us understand some bits of what India can, what sort of design can do in India. And for that, I wanted to start with like a more meta question that India sort of has many Indias, as they say, and we really never had, and at least I'm not aware of any direct translating word for design, right? In India, we have kala, we have karigari, and so on and so forth. So, how has your journey been? Like, how do you see design in India? What is your interpretation in last 2 decades?
Sure. We'll attempt to answer this very tough question. But it's interesting, Kedar, that you mentioned Kala and Karigari. The English equivalent for this would be art or craft, and not necessarily design. But I did take the liberty of kind of looking up on Google Translate what throws up for design. It's interesting. I'll just read out a few things that stood out, right? So design translated as rachna or creation, banawat or making, yojna or plan, namuna, which is a specimen, irada, which is an intention, or another word for that is abhipray, mansuba, which is a schema, right? And tarkib, which is a means or a process.
Wow.
I think it's really interesting that design has these translations in design in Hindi, because I actually feel that this illustrates what design as a discipline needs to establish itself as, as a systematic, detail-oriented process, which is as well about a crafted output. We all talk about in design the balance between form and function, and which is why our crafts or our kala or karigari are actually great examples of excellent design, right? But they do not define design itself, right? And for the layperson, obviously there's a certain imagination associated with the noun design, right? Which is a designed piece of fashion or a designed, lifestyle product that is out of the ordinary, that is very slick, very sharp, that is often also seen to be excessive or expensive, right?
Mm.
But we forget that perhaps the more common use of the word design is actually a verb, right? Which
Mm.
is to design something. And I feel that uh, meaning of the word is a lot more universal and a lot more democratic, right? Because most people have an intention to design something, right? I mean, we work at Quicksand, we work with policy. So a policy maker wants to design a public program that can, let's say, stem leakage, stem corruption, make sure that the benefits reach the end user. Or, on the other extreme, a school teacher may want to design an experience for her students, right? That sparks curiosity, sparks imagination. A student may be wanting to design a science experiment. Right? I'm currently working with my 8-year-old daughter on designing a solar system, right,
Mhm.
that she can kind of model and display in her class. A mason is often designing a house, a gardener is wanting to design a beautiful park. And I feel like this act of doing, right, and doing it well in a way that obsesses about details, that celebrates excellence, that is really built to last, and that understands and responds to the needs of its end user is what design is, right? And
Mm.
I feel like when you ask me about what design in India is about, I I mean, I don't think as a civilization we are short on artifacts that exemplify this process of design, right? This celebration of excellence, like the classic act of creating something that truly balances form and function, like our temples, our palaces, our kind of ancient cities, our textiles. I was going through the Audiogyan podcast, and I believe you did a podcast on the pot or the
Yes.
or the lota.
Yeah. Not the Lota, but Lota was referred in Ashish Deshpande, Elephant Design.
Right,
He
right.
mentioned about it. But recently I did an episode with the pot and the Khattam.
Huh,
So two
right.
different episodes.
They're all examples of it. They're artifacts that have stood the test of time, right? But then the question I think we should ask ourselves is, where did we lose our way, right?
Mm.
Why did our modern artifacts become synonymous with, let's say, poor quality? Like, why has Jugaad captured our imagination, right? Of hustling, of piecing things together very hurriedly. Even if, like, I think when we talk of Jugaad, we talk of resourcefulness, but it is really piecing things together. And why doesn't, like, made in India inspire confidence, right? And I
Mm.
think that's where, if I think of a, of now a 2 decade old practice, I think that's where design in India is. Having experienced also a phenomenal change that has happened in the last maybe 20 years, and we're only beginning to see the results of that, right?
Mm.
Of that enterprise, of that sort of resurgence of our own confidence. So I think design in India is at that cusp where we're trying to shake off like the resource poor mindset, right, of post independence India, right, where a lot of resources were taken away from us, right, and that was that was sort of the impoverished state that we inherited,
Mm.
right, and therefore, like, the resigning ourselves to maybe like a subpar poor quality products and services. So I feel like we are at the cusp of reclaiming our tradition of excellence and believing that we can do actually much, much better. And to that extent, I want to cite some examples that actually inspire confidence in recent times, right? And which for me exemplify the coming of age of Indian design. And these are going to be some very unexpected examples, because I don't
Mhm.
talk of design in the same way as, let's say, design does. I think, design needs to kind of rearticulate its role and its meaning. For me, the Indian financial services sector, and what we've been able to do with, let's say, a system like UPI and making payments accessible to all, like a well-designed infrastructure that has brought a very complex and a very archaic banking system onto the front lines of innovation, I feel like is the system or is a design that we need to celebrate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I look around, and I'm sure all of us have these examples in our lives, but there are faith-based organizations that we are either a part of or that our parents are a part of, right? And when you see the scale at which they are able to mobilize millions of people
Mm,
to serve humanity, right? At an organizational level, it is actually something to marvel at on how these systems work like clockwork, right? They're
yeah,
all volunteer based, that they mount massive missions and they deliver.
yeah, yeah.
Those are systems that are designed exceedingly well, because they sort of plug at a very deep human motivation, which is attached to faith,
Mm,
right? I'm especially inspired and excited about the resurgence of crafts, especially textiles in the country. You see that we are buying and consuming, traditional textiles. Of course, I mean there's a massive push and the force of kind of modernized power looms is still there, and
mm,
fast fashion is still there, but I think there's a resurgence of textile crafts.
mm,
And then, I mean, you mentioned you were part of Clear Trip. I'm actually really inspired by what some of these products and services that are proudly made in India, that have come, on the back of like a new confident breed of founders and startup and entrepreneurs. I mean, think Zeroda, the online broking platform, CultFit, Dunzo, ClearTrip. I feel like these are products that are made in India and that
mm.
are exemplifying some form of excellence, right? And then maybe a few years back, the farmers cooperative movement that has delivered like actually an agricultural surplus in India. Like for me, these are the designs to be celebrated, right?
Mm.
And that is where design in India is at. So, a philosophical answer to a philosophical question.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just blown away with the note at which you started, because this is like very eloquently captured and articulated, given the power of design and also the breadth of design. Right now, we have reached some depths, and that's why these clear trips and Dunzos are sort of seeing the scale and stuff, because they've gone in depths. But the trade-off is then there are certain silos which are being created. Like UPI is a great example. It's just done massively well for India. It's a case study for the rest of the world. But little bit of sustainability of how this will be fueled on an ongoing basis rather than burning banks' money is little. But
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll get there, right? I mean, at least it's a great start.
Absolutely. So I think the point I was trying to make, Kedar, is that these are not necessarily the end outcomes, right? For
Hmm.
me, this is a
The
sign that
process.
there are solutions being built which respond to the complex needs of our society,
Hmm.
right? That is, and of course there are problems, right? I mean, you look at any of the aggregator platforms, there's a huge debate around around fair wages, around like the entire sort of gig economy, and the criticism that comes for. So of course there are problems, and I feel like those problems are important to surface and they will require constant work in progress. But for me, these are early signs of a more confident expression of design in India, right? That is charting its own path, and therefore it gives me hope and gives me immense kind of exuberance.
Yeah, yeah. Ayush, Quicksand is in Goa, right?
Hmm.
I
We're
think
based
something.
actually.
Yeah.
Is
No,
it
go
clear?
ahead.
No, we are based in three cities, Kedar. In Delhi is where we started,
Hmm,
and in Bangalore and Goa is our latest. I mean, 5 years, 6 years old now,
hmm,
but our latest studio. We set that up in 2016, 17.
hmm. Yeah, the reason why I ask is because something is brewing in Goa, uh, in terms of design talent and in terms of future thinking. Because I interviewed Ayaz Basrai,
Yeah.
the bus ride studio, and he also put it very nicely that yes, we have a strong history, strong tradition, but let's not make like history our crutch to sort of move ahead, but use it like a bouncing board. So you just fall back like a trampoline and just bounce, and make some leapfrogs into the future, given we have a strong base of design, culture, art, and a lot of other stuff happening. I think you also brought an important point of we inherited certain things after the independence, and we were like lack of resources and stuff. According to me, again, our education system is also mainly inspired by the West, at least in the initial days. So and seems like it was mainly geared towards profit, it was mainly geared towards standardization so that we can scale. So like, have you sort of pondered upon what are the insights or learnings to reimagine like India's plural futures through Unbox also? I mean, I give keep giving this example in bunch of places that we start off with all like just one channel on TV, then you like just bombard with like thousands of channels, and then you again end may you just again show one channel and call it personalized. Right? So it's just capitalist way of putting stuff. But traditionally, again, not in that romantic notion of oh hamara bharat great hai, but we had this personalization ingrained just because of the dynamics and the culture. And that's where I think that plural kind of sentiment lies. So can you share something about it, like what are your learnings, or sort of,
Sure.
yeah, how do you imagine India's plural futures?
Yeah. I mean, we've, as a practice, Kedar, we've been working in, of course, in India, but also in like South Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of Sub-Saharan Africa. And oftentimes, most of our clients are kind of based in the US and Europe that are investing in these markets, right? I'm not just talking of India, but the global South, so to say, right? Emerging markets, and um, and we work both across like the social sector and also the commercial sector. So this question around, how do you find, and a lot of uh, big investments that have been made in India that fail to find like a product market fit, right? You're from the sector, so you understand that well, and the obsession around that.
Yeah.
But honestly, even within the global south, although there are structural similarities, right, between, let's say, an India and Indonesia, the way in which governance is set up, the way in which public systems kind of either become a barrier or an enabler for like massive scale innovation. So there are a lot of these cultural similarities, the value of community, the value of tradition, and how that still plays out in our everyday lives, the importance of family, and so on. But in spite of all these similarities, I truly believe that there is no market like India. It is a unique beast and a very, very, very difficult beast to tame.
Mm,
So finding a product market fit without first understanding this very unique market is a bit of a pipe dream, right?
mm, mm,
And some of our learnings about these plural kind of futures is actually linked to plural past and plural present as well, right? And it is maybe an oft quoted cliche as well, but
mm.
it is also glaringly obvious, right, that there are
Yeah.
multiple Indias within India. And the question that we ask often of ourselves and of our clients and people we work with is that what is your capacity to service these multiple Indias, right?
Mm,
So for starters, you have to have the capability to service this, because that mindset of a standardized solution that can be scaled across such a diverse market is indeed a pipe dream, right? Because to begin with, there are certain artifacts through which people will interact with your service, with whatever your service is, right? So there are multiple languages, there are multiple visual cultures, there are multiple climates, there are multiple livelihoods, some actually completely informal and barter based, which are even hard to fathom, right? They don't fall within the purview of the livelihoods in the way that we understand it. And these are things that are on the surface that you will, as a service provider, immediately interact with. Like, you can't have a service if you don't have language capabilities in India, right? Of being able to service the multiple languages. You can't go with a standardized visual skin for your service, because there is a very different visual culture down south as compared to the west or the east, for that matter. These are things on the surface, but then there are hidden codes that you need to understand, and these are multiple histories, multiple mythologies, multiple superstitions, multiple castes and ethnicities, multiple temperaments and mindset. Like, the list is quite endless. So for us, I think this only manifests as just as some kind of eternal curiosity, right? Just acknowledging that we know little about our own country, and therefore whatever we take on, right, is with like exploring that with like complete fascination, and bringing that fascination to our clients and our partners, right? It's a mindset of learners, it's a mindset of being completely new in a situation all the time. And I think it begs anybody who's trying to work through this amazing kind of this sort of marvelous abundant culture, is that you have to do it with an unbiased sense of exploration, right? And that is what UnBox has also done over the years, right? So from like exploring and documenting, let's say, the Goan heritage, when we started our studio there, to like a dance opera that we produced, Antariksh Sanchar, that has combined a very classical tradition of Bharatnatyam and Carnatic music to sort of the more emerging, form of electronic music. We've done fellowships that span the length and breadth of this country, working with Barefoot in Thilonia, Auroville in Pondicherry, to a journey along the Grand Trunk Road. That, I think, it begins with that exploration and understanding that there are these multiple kind of Indias within India. That's been our biggest learning, right? Is that you will have to be in this constant learning journey of learning. And clients that are looking to build something, again, it runs counter to what business at scale might necessitate, and that's been the industrialized economy mindset, right? That you standardize, you produce in one corner and you distribute to the rest of the world. That, I don't think that's a model that'll serve India well, right? So yeah, so that's been kind of our learning.
Correct, correct. It's so amazing, and the layers of information that you have like just shared to process. I was like, I have multiple threads here, but just two which come to immediately to mind is that there's this another cliche, right? With great power comes great responsibility. I think I'm seeing it very closely at Property Guru, where there are these five markets that we are sort of, yeah, number one, number two spot in terms of market share. And I was never exposed to certain cultural nuances of Vietnam. And if I bring in my aesthetics or the European kind of clean UI and good typography, it may not work. So is the same case with Starbucks and McDonald's coming to India. I mean, they must have come with some thought process, and then they had to really adapt to India. So it's kind of very dynamic in nature, where India as a unit is also adapting, like leapfrogging into certain aspects like 4G and stuff like that. Everyone on mobile at the same time. Brands are also sort of adapting themselves to fit in the market. So I think it's a very, very complex relationship. And the way you put it is that just surfacing this up, inquiring this with utmost genuineness and honesty, and just like bringing that to the client, it's just amazing. Yeah. We'll change tracks a bit, which is about this what design can do circular challenge. And before we jump into that, like again, getting your experience documented is like India, again, I believe had a very huge upcycling, recycling, and good design systems, right? And right from, I don't know, Mohanja, Harappa civilization to recent past, there were things which were circular in nature. We have this, at least in Maharashtra, we have this funny thing that right from your coconut shell to the final, like it just, no, I think actually it's from your t-shirt, the
Mm.
cotton can go up to the finest details of making a small, I don't know, in Marathi we call it vat for the diya, right? The
Mm.
cotton small thing. So
Mm.
we have been using it. Now I have been colored with multiple variations. It is because of the poverty, is it because of our lack of resources, is it because of we value stuff till the end,
Mm.
is it because of our upcycling and reusing kind of things? You have any learnings there, because that will segue into the what make it circular challenge, which what design can do, and Unbox are championing. So
Yeah, yeah,
what
sure.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so maybe I also want to briefly touch upon kind of our association with what design can do over the last 4 years, right? And every challenge, so it started with the, or at least our association started with the Clean Energy Challenge, which was, I think, 2018, if I'm not mistaken, 2018-19. Then there was the No Waste Challenge, which was 1920. Then, of course, that because of the pandemic got extended, and then the latest challenge was a circular design. So they're all under the broad kind of umbrella theme of climate change, because it is also supported by IKEA Foundation. What Design Can Do is a Dutch platform. Netherlands is sort of at the forefront of climate conversation. So that's the theme that grounds all the challenges. And in every challenge, the way we usually build up the challenge is that there have been 5 to 6 countries that have been a part of this challenge. So India is one of them, along with Mexico, Brazil, Amsterdam itself, Japan, Kenya. Uh, and the local partners, which would be Quicksand and UnBox in India, would begin to do research and try to understand what is the what is the interpretation of this challenge in the local context,
Hmm.
right? And I think the most fascinating thing about this challenge and this platform is that when you look at these 6 countries, some of them in the global north, some of them in the global south, there's always a perspective that is brought that is unique to the country, right? So when we spoke about clean energy, like our perspective on that was that while the global discourse on this is energy efficiency, move to green energy. In India, the conversation actually is about energy dignity, right? Because there are people who don't even have the basic kind of per capita energy that you'd require, which is qualify for a dignified quality of life, right? So it's important to kind of bring that perspective, and that's what we've done over subsequent challenges, and that's always become a part of the global brief as well. And so
Hmm.
when we started to do research on circular design, right, I think the things that you have just said, that that India historically has been actually circular in thought and in philosophy, right? uh, I mean, I haven't reflected on it enough, but just even our philosophical moorings around the circularity of life, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Uh, is, I mean, that's the most basic and fundamental framework that grounds us, right? As one kind of, let's say, dominant religion in the country, which has its roots in this, this circular understanding of life, and and therefore you see that it cuts across, like there are a few value chains that the circular design challenge focuses on. So it focuses on what we wear, what we eat, what we buy, what we package, and how we build, right? These are 5 things. So the built environment, food, textiles, consumption, and packaging. And if you take any of these, you'll see that India has had a historical tradition around reuse, around recycle, upcycling. So food, you said it, like we have leftover rice that we would ferment and it would become kind of a kind of an edible item, or vegetable peels that will become condiments. These are all parts of how we tend to use the last morsel, uh, and therefore that kind of intuitive understanding is what we wanted to surface in the challenge, and say that, like, for those that are looking to engage with this challenge, it's important, exactly like the example you quoted, which is look back on certain inherent practices and bounce back from that, right, and see what we can build from there. In textiles, there are again craft traditions, but even today, the idea of reuse, of passing on clothes, again, sorry that I keep bringing up my children in this, but in this conversation, but clothes pass on from generation to generation, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
my daughter has worn her elder cousin's kind of clothes, and they have passed on to her younger sister, and they're now going to the youngest kind of nephew in the family. So those are traditions that have always been a part of it, right?
Mm,
And I think just bringing that to the forefront, and you'll see that also in the circular design brief, that some of the calls to action it makes urges the applicants to look back on practices and see how they can sit alongside certain the modern processes and what the ask and requirement of the modern world and society is. So those are learnings that we have. And again, I mean, you can look at the built environment also, the classic kind of use of wood, mud, stone as materials that are, that go back into that biological cycle. That's, and we'll speak about it shortly on what circular design actually means. These are
mm,
all building materials that have been part of our palette, our construction palette, right? So to make and they are responsive to the climatic conditions of India. So just to ensure that those are still part of the building vocabulary, and will automatically hark back to certain circularity principles that have always been a part of our society.
mm, mm. Interesting. But so like when you when like what design can do has partnered with IKEA and this make it circular challenge. I'm sure a lot of, as I mentioned in the earlier part, was brands are also trying to contextualize, bring in brew or sort of empower the local talent. Like a lot of IKEA will now see made in Bangladesh and made in India. So like, can you talk a little bit about like these things, what we build, what we do, how we eat, these two three things that you mentioned? Are there any fundamental building blocks to approach this circular design according to what design can do and Quicksand and Unbox?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, I mean, this is, of course, a lot has been written about it. I
Hmm.
think I'll just quote from some of the established principles of circular design and what does that mean, right? I think it's important because, again, one of our feedback to the global brief was that sometimes we get caught up in these words of like circular design, and obviously it's sometimes seen as sort of old wine in a new bottle, but it's important to just figure out what the principles are and really talk about that. And so you'll see that the global brief actually tries to use very simple language,
Hmm.
while the brief is called make it circular. But even when the some of the principles that it puts down is that it should be designed to last, it should work with nature, it should use what exists, right? So these are just simple kind of principles. Broadly, if you look at what circular economy kind of means, is that typically and traditionally there is the take make waste kind of linear model, right? That you
Hmm.
take something, the natural resources, you make something, and then there is a discarded end of life product. That is a very linear model, and that is what has led to sort of a throwaway economy, right, where waste is generated and you're not really thinking about end of life management of that waste. So the circular economy or the circular design principles are essentially, there are three fundamental pillars of circular design. One is eliminating waste, right? So how do you, and when you think of it that way, you actually also realize that waste is inherently a design flaw, right? If you design something to generate waste, you've sort of hard coded that into a product or a service, right?
Correct.
And that's why, like design, therefore, and challenging designers to rethink that of how do you eliminate waste from what you're designing becomes a really important pillar of circular design, right? So and this is, I mean, simple things like your Lay's chips and the packets and all the kind of fast moving consumer goods and the plastic packaging. We all know this, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
Plastics that are thrown, it's somebody designed that into the product, right? And so waste is now inherently a part of it. But if you question that from ground up, from first principles, then you would be serving the circular design principle well of eliminating waste. The second is actually recirculating products, right? So ensuring that products and materials remain in circulation at their highest value. What that essentially means is that you keep the product in use, right? Ideally as the built form, or if it is then no longer usable, then its constituent parts are still, can be salvaged and reused. So, for example, if you take the phone, right, ideally a well-designed phone which adheres to circular design principles will remain in use for a very long time, which means that the parts can be serviced, they can be repaired, they can be, you can take out the battery, put in a new one. This is just fundamental. Today, phones are designed to actually, at the moment that battery life goes, it's designed to be thrown away, right? And this is all, it's Kedar, it's all conscious decision of product manufacturers and designers. You know that better than anybody, right? So keeping kind of the product in circulation, and if let's say the phone becomes absolutely unusable, then at least its constituent parts can be salvaged and reused in perhaps another phone, right? Maybe the screen still has life left in it and it can be salvaged. So that is what the second principle is, which is recirculating products. So eliminating waste, recirculating products. And then the third principle is regenerating nature, right? And this is most obvious in food systems, right? So that like the kind of agricultural practices that actually conserve and regenerate nature rather than deplete nature, right? A lot of modern agricultural practices are actually one of the biggest contributors to climate change. Synthetic fertilizers, the use of pesticides or fossil fuels, fresh water. These are all things that deplete the natural system. But as you move to newer forms of agricultural practices like agroforestry or permaculture, they are trying to build regenerative systems where you're not depleting nature. So even that's one example, right? So regenerative systems. So those are the three principles of circular design: eliminating waste, keeping products in circulation, and regenerating nature, right? And that's an easy way to think about whether you are taking the right decisions as a designer.
Got it. And these also build a foundation block while you guys are evaluating?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
the applications that come in are evaluated on these three parameters, right? And of course, it's not possible to always to demonstrate all three principles in your idea, but these are also connected in some way. So as long as you're able to demonstrate one or two pillars and they stand out and how you've applied those principles, as an applicant, you stand a good chance of moving to the next round.
Yeah. And obviously principles are principles. I mean, you don't have to change them. These are, as we call it, first principle. But is there any challenge to contextualize for India?
I
given
think
the, or you give that liberty when, by understanding where these applicants are coming from?
absolutely. So people are meant to provide ideas that are rooted in some context, which means that if there are applicants from India, they would typically be trying to solve a particular challenge at the local scale, right?
Hmm.
But their ideas can also scale across other cultures. So it's not a hard and fast that your idea has to demonstrate, relevance for the world at large. It can be rooted in a hyper local context, and you need to demonstrate to the jury and the evaluators that for that context, how your solution is actually delivering to the brief.
Hmm. Got it. Ayush, it's just like fascinating, and there's a lot to unpack in this. I have to listen to this episode over and over again, because you have like well articulated a lot of information in this so far. I wanted to like pick on the last track of this session, and I wish to have a few more sessions with you definitely. But I wanted to just understand Unbox and Quicksand practices in general, like where you guys have engaged in. I see a lot of initiatives undertaken by Unbox through the years by collaborating with British Council, NID, Goethe Institute. So, like, I have a couple of questions on that front, and maybe we can conclude with just re-articulating what design can do and what circular challenges. But before that, like, just tell us something about Unbox and what are the other initiatives, and so on and so forth.
Sure, Kedar. Well, the start for us as a collective was in Quicksand, which started in 2004, right? And we're three co-founders, and then kind of grew to like five partners right now that manage the practice, an interdisciplinary practice. My own background, Kedar, sorry, I didn't touch upon it earlier, but I am not a designer by training.
Oh,
so
great. That's great. In fact, you like so am I. I'm not from a design school,
right,
and that keeps us now. I can feel free to say that on a like neutral side, you're not from like lobbying on a school.
right.
Like कि मैं NID से हूँ, like that's also not the story. And yeah, you're practicing enough to understand the nuances. So yeah,
Yeah.
continue please.
I mean, our kind of origins have also been in an interdisciplinary setup. I come from business and technology. That's my training. My co-founders are from film, photography, product slash toy design, humanities, literature, and of course, product design again. So we do have, an NID champion in the studio. But 2004 is when Quicksand started, and about 6 to 7 years into our practices when we started Unbox. And Unbox was really born out of our desire to connect to a larger community. I think when we started as a design research practice in India, especially for the kind of work that we're doing, it was very kind of early years. 2004 was quite early. We were trying to break away from the traditions of design and moving into this kind of upstream design as a process and design as a mindset, and starting to work. So there were really no contemporaries or peers at that time. And gradually, as we started to work, we figured that there are people who think about it in very similar ways, but not always from the discipline of design necessarily, right? Like for us, like we as individuals were examples of it. And so we wanted to reach out and connect to that community and bring them together under the same roof and start conversations about this intersectionality, right? Which is where I think we really thrive as a practice, and which is where our belief systems kind of really lie, which is this idea of intersecting disciplines and seeing
Mm.
what magic gets created at that intersection. So that's how Unbox came about. And so in 2010, we got actually a small grant from Goethe Institute to set up what we called at that time the greenhouse, which was in Hoskas village in Delhi. It was a small kind of two-story building where We ran it for a year, basically as a community space. So a lot of like open events, maker events, small exhibits, picked up odd themes and invited people to come have conversations, exhibit their stuff. So just starting that community, and then got bolder and started the first festival in 2011, which was the first UnBox festival, right?
Mm.
And that was a 3-day affair, a kind of a global platform, because we were supported by a lot of these cultural institutions, and so there was a healthy exchange of creative kind of practitioners from Europe that came over to India, a lot of Indian practices, students that came together. It was 3 days of part conference, part music festival, performing arts, seminars, exhibitions, and so on. So that was the
Oh,
first manifest of the UnBox Festival. And since then, we've done about 6 editions of the festival, mostly in Delhi, but also the last one in 2019 in Bangalore. It's called the UnBox Festival. And there are multiple other things that UnBox has spawned. So we've done residencies, like with the British Council, we hosted a residency in NID, which was exploring the theme of future cities. And there were about 35 architects, urban designers, thinkers, creators that came together, and they lived in the NID campus for about 2 weeks, and used Ahmedabad as a city to think about what the future of cities would be. And several projects that came out of it that got funded subsequently by the British Council. We did fellowships at one point in time where we located fellows in different kind of organizations, and they came back to share kind of the ideas in the UnBox Festival. We do these pop-up festivals where UnBox also collaborates with other festivals. There is a Mozilla run festival called the MozFest that happens in UK, and UnBox regularly kind of hosts an exhibition space there, right? So we take some of our thoughts and learning. So it's really a public platform. It's a public engagement platform. And,
awesome.
and we've been doing that as a labor of love. And I think it has given us, now we can say that, there is a community that believes in the power of intersectionality, right? And the power of working at, and so therefore the tagline for UnBox is action at the intersections.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. It's intersection and generally these. I just completely relate with what you said. It's super powerful, and like congratulations for putting out some amazing work and collaborating with some amazing brands also. So yeah, last two questions. I know this can go longer, and I'm more than happy to take this further. Continue with this. Is that two things, right? One is, given the conversation so far and understanding what circular challenge is, and your practice, especially in India, and understanding the plurals of India, have you sort of, is there a broad list or some areas or some disciplines where design needs to intervene, especially in India? And this is again for two reasons. One is just to understand this, and second is maybe that could fuel some curiosity and creativity for applicants who are interested in applying. I think the last date is 11th January, right?
That's right.
2023. Yeah.
That's right.
S- Uh,
That's such a
so,
Pandora's box, Kedar. You the list of things in India that require urgent design intervention. Oh, that
yeah.
list is endless.
So any domain, like, because you are looking at from a very macro level as well. So any broad disciplines, healthcare,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, off the top of my head, the affordable products and services, right, that are trying to improve the quality of life of, let's say, the growing kind of middle class, right, in India, that is still an underserved market. So you can talk about housing, you can talk about life improving kind of utilities like home appliances or things that that improve the quality of living. I think there's an urgent need for these to be designed better, right? And especially, like, I think everything that you talk about India has to have a future lens of what the fact that per capita consumption across the board and any of the quality of life indicators is going to be very low for India, right? And when you think of that climbing up multiple notches over the next, let's say, 20 years, I think circularity becomes I think it's really an urgent call to action, right? Because you have to ingrain these principles. Otherwise, you multiply that with the scale of India, and we're really, we'll be contributing to global disasters.
Yeah.
So I think that's important for us. That's really important for us. So this is a very timely intervention. This is a very small intervention, actually, to begin with, but I feel like to raise the consciousness for people, it's very, very timely. I think our education and health systems need an urgent design intervention, right? Our basic utilities like electricity, water, sanitation, again, and the government interface that the layman has needs an urgent design intervention. So these are some things that I would say, tourism needs an urgent design intervention. I feel like there's a lot to celebrate, but again, responsible, sustainable tourism is the need of the hour. And so, and of course, better tourist experience to begin with, right? Because to be able to celebrate this heritage, I think we need to focus on that. So these are some of the things that I would list out. But the challenge, of course, calls out like 5 domains. Like I said, it calls out food, textiles, built environment, packaging, and consumption, right, of everyday needs and appliances and so on. So yeah, so the canvas is really broad and open.
Correct. Yeah. And it's amazing given the market for India, because you have like 10 rupees a person living on 10 to 15 rupees a day to like a lakh rupees a day also. So we have the length and the breadth. I think
Yeah.
we can find out which sort of segment we want to go after and then like explore there. Cool. I wanted to conclude with one last question. Is that can you share any like 1 or 2 case studies, because which were part of what design can do? It will also set the mood for kind of applicants there were, the scale of that, or any particular project that you loved. It doesn't matter if the scale was there, but given the exposure of these 5 countries and applicants from all around the world, anything
Sure.
that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, my personal favorite. So I was also on the jury for the Clean Energy Challenge. So I kind of recall those applications very fondly, and I know them well. So
Hmm.
my two kind of favorites from that time were one, a project
This
called
was in 2000,
2000, I'd say 19. Yeah,
19.
2019, right?
Hmm.
And there was one kind of project which was also the winner, called Beehive, which is
Hmm.
done by a Delhi-based architectural practice called Ant Studio, a young
Never heard
kind
of
of
them.
architectural practice, and they built this terracotta system, Kedar, which is essentially what their whole idea was that because there is so much. I mean, because of the power shortages in India, there's a lot of captive power generation through DG sets, and typically they end up contributing to a rising temperature, at least the ambient temperature, right? Because of the hot exhaust, also air conditioning and all of that. And so they had built this almost like an art installation, which could be like a 2-story high, assembly of terracotta tiles and pots.
Hmm.
And there was water circulated through it. So it was just kind of water being recirculated. And these were placed next to the DG sets, let's say in a large commercial setup, right? And so the hot exhaust from the DG system would actually pass through the terracotta tiles and cool the ambient temperature. So it served both as an art installation, but also as an ambient cooling device, right? Which I
Amazing.
thought was really interesting. I I just met the founder of the studio very recently, 2 weeks back. And what's interesting is that they realized that it was hard to commercialize this. While it was a really beautiful installation and a very clever idea, they have turned this into a building system now. So they use this. It's almost become an iconic style of their architecture, where this is a surface cladding that they used in buildings. and they have converted this into a building system, which I think is really, really interesting and exciting, of how the idea has evolved. So that was one personal favorite, and the other was from Amsterdam. It got a student citation award. It was called Block E, where the idea was simple, that you could have these blocks of rechargeable batteries that could simply snap on to. It was a concept, like a concept design, that it could snap onto your bicycle, recharge as you cycle through the city, right? So it stores the battery, and then you can use that energy as a currency. So you could take that block, take it out, go into a coffee shop, and slot that into a payment machine. Depending on the energy credits that you have in that, you can actually start to pay through energy as a currency, right? And which I thought was, again, a very clever idea and a very, very interesting. So it's quite fascinating that when you see the set of ideas that emerge from a global challenge like this, they come from the traditions and histories, like the terracotta work that I spoke about, to something that is completely futuristic, and is and shows you what the possibility is. So it really what we call kind of scripts the energy transitions from the past, present to the future. So these are two of my favorites, and I've always cited these as examples that I really like.
Amazing. Yeah, I can hardly comprehend the spectrum of this. Love to be watching you guys more closely. Cool. I think anything you want to add? Any links? Any sort of, just like your plug if you have.
I mean, we are on the last stretch of the challenge. I think there's barely a month to go till the 11th Jan. All the information is available on whatdesigncando.com. So, do go to the link, download the brief. It's a fairly quick read, and doesn't matter if you are an established startup or you are a student with a good idea. Reach out to us. We are on quicksand.co.in. You can write to us at hello@quicksand.co.in, and we'd be happy to answer questions, shape the brief with you, help you get your application in shape. But yeah, I mean, the more the merrier. So the only plug I have is act fast.
Yeah, it's very, very highly required also, given
Absolutely.
the hour in which we are. Yeah, Ayush, it has been really wonderful talking to you. A lot of things to learn, unpack, and reflect back on. Definitely would like to collaborate deeper as we go along. But just thanks a lot for your time.
Well, thank you, Kedar, for I think your questions set the tone for it, and they were actually they just prompted a deep reflective answer. So I'm happy that you asked those questions, and thank you once again for having us and for showcasing the platform.
Awesome. And all the best for everyone. All the links will be in the show notes. Thanks once again. That's it. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.